Welcome to today's class. I'm Adeze Chinwe, the lead instructor at Simplified Education Hub. On this space, we keep learning fun and yet effective. So today, I'm going to be drilling you on WAEC 2024 biology practicals. It's important to get yourself acquainted with what you should be expecting on the day of your practicals. In one of my videos where I share tips on how you can make 9 A1s in your WAEC in just a single sitting, I revealed that the practical is one of the places any smart student can gather good marks, and then you are sure ready to make your A1 in your subject. So without further ado, let us dive into today's class. So today, these are the specimens that you should be expecting on the day of your practicals. I'm going to drill you on how to identify each of the specimens and then some relatable questions that can be asked on that day. The specimen A is the gill of a fish, alright? While specimen B is the liver of a domestic fowl with the gallbladder intact, alright? So a full liver that still has the gallbladder. And specimen C is the lungs of a domestic fowl. Specimen D is the gizzard of a domestic fowl. And specimen E is the intestine of a domestic fowl as well. And specimen F is the ginger rhizome, while specimen G is the onion bulb. Specimen H is the leaf of Bryophyllum, also known as the miracle leaf. Specimen J is the cassava stem. Specimen K is the cassava tuber. Specimen L is the thoracic vertebrae. Specimen M is the humerus bone. And specimen N is the mango seed, while specimen P is the femur bone. And specimen Q is the lumbar vertebrae. While lastly, we have specimen R, which is the what? The orange seed. So these are the specimens that will be displayed to you in an alphabetical order. You are expected to know them. So now we are going to dive into the next segment of the class, where I'm going to be analyzing some relatable questions which you should be expecting on that day. Thank you and see you. Okay, our first specimen, which is specimen A, is the gill of a fish. If you're asked to describe the gill of a fish, the first thing you should know is that the gill is the respiratory organ of the fish, okay? Then it is located at both sides of the head region of the fish. You can see it, head is the head region, alright? And also, the gills are about 3 to 4 in number. Look at here, you have it, 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright, they are usually 3 to 4 in number, and then the gill is protected by the structure we call operculum, or the gill cover. Then, this gill, what does it do? It helps to extract dissolved oxygen in water and then eliminating carbon dioxide. Alright, then if you're asked to draw the gill, this is a typical sample of what you are expected to draw. Okay, the gill has 3 main parts. Alright, the first is the gill filament, and then we have the gill arc, and then we have the gill raker. Alright, this gill filament, this is the point, the exact point in which what oxygen is absorbed into the body. So it is a point of respiration. Alright, you can see it's richly supplied with blood vessel. Alright, then look at this. You see this in the middle is called the gill arc. The gill arc helps to anchor or support the gill filament and the gill raker. Alright, while the gill raker here helps to prevent particles of food substance from getting into the gill filament. So this is what you are expected to draw. Look at it, a typical example in this real fish. Alright, look at the gill raker, look at the gill arc, and then the gill filament. So that is it about our specimen A, and I hope it's well understood. Now let's move to the next specimen. Alright, specimen B is the liver of the domestic fowl with the gallbladder still attached. Alright, the domestic fowl is called the Gallus domesticus. That is the scientific name for the domestic fowl. Alright, it belongs to, if you ask, alright, so if you're asked to classify the domestic fowl, we know the domestic fowl. Okay, it belongs to the kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Aves, order Craliformes, family Phascidae, genus Gallus, and the species is Gallus domesticus. So note that. Then let's now properly look at the liver. If you're asked to describe the liver that you'll be looking at on the day of your practical, alright, you start by describing that the liver is a large reddish brown bilobed organ located on the upper right side of the domestic chicken. Alright, bilobed in sense you can say is a two lobe. Alright, yes, organ. Then one of the major or the primary function of the liver you should note is that it produces a greenish yellow fluid called bile. Yes, this bile helps to break down or emulsify the fat we have eaten. Also, the liver cleanses the blood, it stores energy, and also produces other important proteins. Alright, so in general the liver keeps the fowl healthy by processing nutrients and then eliminating toxins from the body. Alright, then recall that the gallbladder was specifically what mentioned, alright, as part of what should come with the liver. Now, what is the relationship between the gallbladder and the liver of the domestic fowl? Alright, know that the gallbladder is a pear-shaped organ, okay, located under the liver. Look at this now. You see this greenish spot under this liver? That is what we call the gallbladder. Function of this gallbladder is that it houses or it stores the bile which is being produced by the liver. Alright, so that is the relationship between that. Now, on to our next specimen, which is still on the domestic fowl. We have the lung of the domestic fowl. You should know that it is a respiratory organ, alright, in the fowl. There are two lungs located and they are connected to the trachea. So you see where this pointer is? Okay, this is the first lung, this is another one, and this is the trachea where they are what? They are connected to. Is that okay? The respiratory system of the domestic fowl is quite different from those of other vertebrates in the sense that it lacks what we call the diaphragm. Alright, we know it is a contraction and the relaxation of the diaphragm in higher mammals that brings about or facilitates what? The breathing process. Alright, and since the domestic fowl do not have diaphragm, they rather do what? They depend on what? The continuous movement of their ribs and their sternum or the breastbone to draw in air. Alright, and also know that the lungs are also smaller and they do not expand. Now let us see our next specimen, which is the gizzard of still the Gallus domesticus. Alright, the gizzard, as you can see, this is the external structure of what the gizzard looks like. Alright, it has a whitish inner and then a reddish brown, okay, outerward wall surrounding. So that is what you should describe as the physical appearance of what the gizzard looks like. Alright, then it is a strong muscular part of the chicken's alimentary canal. Alright, we know that the domestic fowl do not have teeth for grinding the food that they eat, just like mammals and other animals. Alright, so it is the work of this gizzard to grind up or break up the food that the chicken has eaten with the help of the grits. The grit is the sand-like particles, alright, which the chicken also eats when they are eating. And the gizzard, of course, is a very nutritious organ, alright. It is rich in protein, vitamin, zinc, iron, phosphorus, name it. Okay, so when next you stop by a restaurant, kindly do request for to be served gizzard. Also low in fat and cholesterol. So these are what you should know about the gizzard. Specimen E is the intestine of the domestic fowl. Alright, the intestine, you're asked to describe it. That is a long coily tube of the domestic fowl's alimentary canal. Alright, it is divided into the small and the large intestine. Okay, the small intestine begins immediately after the gizzard. Alright, and it has three parts, which are the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Alright, so this is the gizzard over here that you are looking. So just immediately you can see this prominent place is the duodenum. Alright, and that is it about the small intestine. While the small intestine, it breaks down and absorbs food, alright, using digestive enzymes. Okay, yes, while at the large intestine, absorption of more water happens there, and also waste or leftover food are then turned into stool, which will later be eliminated by the body. Alright, so that is it about the intestine of the domestic chicken. Now on the specimen F, which is the ginger rhizome. Alright, if you ask to describe a ginger rhizome, know that the ginger rhizome is a thick, knobby underground stem of the ginger plant. Alright, look at it. Then the skin, it is brownish. It has a brownish skin. When peeled, alright, it reveals a yellow interior. Yes, this is how the inside of a ginger looks, and that is the outside of the ginger. Okay, it is a perennial crop, meaning it completes its life cycle in 2 years. Alright, and it also has pseudostem, or what we call the first stem. Alright, we all know that ginger, it is an aromatic and a very spicy rhizome. Alright, it has the gingerol, which gives it its distinct flavor. And ginger has so many medicinal benefits, alright, ranging from it aids digestion, it reduces nausea and inflammation, and what have you. So ginger is a very, very important plant. Okay, so our next specimen, which is specimen G, is the onion bulb. Alright, and the scientific name for the onion bulb is known as the allium cepa. Alright, so here is the classification. Should in case you are asked, please kindly do well to study them. Alright, yes. Now, what do we have to say about the onion bulb, which is a specimen G? One, you should know that it is the underground part of the onion plant. Alright, yet it consists of layers of fleshy and tightly packed leaves. Alright, which forms a round ball. Alright, yes. Then the skin of the onion looks like a paper. It can be white, it can be purple, and just like you have here, you can see the various colors of the skin of the onions. Alright, and it's widely. Then the onion has a very sharp and pungent aroma and is widely used for cooking. Not just that, onion is loaded with lots of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. Okay, then move on to our next specimen, which is specimen H. It is a Bryophyllum. Alright, this plant has so many names. Okay, this is because of the numerous benefits which this plant has. Alright, it is popularly known as the miracle leaf. Okay, but sometimes we call it the cathedral plant, the mother of thousands and thereabouts. Okay, then the description of this plant. This plant is a succulent plant with a thick fleshy leaves. If you've seen it, you know that it has a unique way in which it grows. How? Have you ever seen a plant that develops its roots on the leaves? This is a typical plant which does that. Alright, you can see it develops a tiny bulb around the edges of its leaves. Yes, look at this. Alright, look at the adventitious roots. Alright, this tiny seedlets, now when they fall off to the ground, they begin to germinate and grow. Alright, then this plant contains flavonoids, it contains fatty acid, and like I said, it has so many numerous benefits health-wise, ranging from the treatment of wounds to treatment of inflammation, fever, cough, headache. Okay, and lastly, it is propagated using its leaves. Alright, we get the leaves, put them into the ground, and then they germinate. So that is it about the miracle leaf or the Bryophyllum. Next is the specimen J. Specimen J is a cassava stem known as the Manihot esculenta. Alright, yes, here is also the classification of Manihot esculenta. Should in case you are asked for it, please do well to get yourself familiarized with it. Then let us describe the cassava stem. Alright, yeah, this is a typical look of what a cassava stem is. It is a woody fibrous part of the cassava plant. Alright, which can grow into several feet. Alright, then the outer appearance, it has a brownish back. Okay, and segmented with nodes. Look at the nodes all around the stem. Alright, and this is where the roots can sprout out from. Alright, how do we propagate the stem? We simply get these roots and then bury them into the soil, and then they begin to grow. Alright, okay, then a specimen K, which is our cassava tuber, that the tuber has a thick starchy roots. all right, of the cassava plant. That is what the tuber is, all right. The skin is brown and rough, all right. It has a white or yellowish flesh inside of it. It depends on the species, all right. It's very rich in carbohydrates, especially starch. Is that all right? Then this cassava tuber can be processed into so many raw food items. Can make our gari. Our regular gari comes from cassava. We can make cassava chips from cassava, cassava flour, and all of that. So these are one of the few benefits of the cassava tuber. Now on to our next specimen, which is specimen L, the thoracic vertebrae. All right. The thoracic vertebrae is a set of 12 bones located on the vertebral column, or what we call the backbone. All right, it is a very rigid bone, which makes it one of the least places that one can encounter injury. All right, the ribs of the rib cage are anchored or supported by this thoracic vertebrae. All right, they are 12 in numbers. We usually represent them with T1 to T12. all right. Then the location, exactly, they are located in the middle of the backbone, all right, between the cervical, that's the neck vertebrae, and then the lower back vertebrae, known as the lumbar vertebrae. So you can see in between the cervical vertebrae and the lumbar, we have the thoracic vertebrae. All right, so it's used for the attachment of ribs. It also protects the heart. It also protects the lungs. All right, and it aids for flexible movements in the upper back. All right, and it also protects the spinal cord. This is what a typical thoracic vertebra looks like. Know that some of the important features you should indicate when drawing this is that each of the vertebra has a rough cylindrical shape. It has facets. All right, the facet connects the ribs from the back. All right, it forms the back of the ribs. All right, then it has several processes. These processes are used for the attachment of muscles. So you can see a process here. This is a transverse process. This is what superior process. Okay, all right. So, and that's being said, we move to our next specimen, which is specimen M. Specimen M is the humerus bone. All right, what is this bone exactly? This bone is the longest bone of the upper arm. All right, it extends from the shoulder down to the elbow. Look at it. This is where we have the humerus bone located. All right. The head of the humerus is round, okay, and it fits into the shoulder in a joint called the glenoid joint. All right, yes, because it is round, it forms the ball and socket joint. It's just like the ball, while the joint of the shoulder is the socket. Then they meet at the glenoid joint. All right, the middle of the humerus is cylindrical and is used for the attachment of muscles. While the tail of the humerus, okay, at the elbow, it connects to two smaller bones known as the radius and the ulna. Here is it. You can see the end of the humerus links to the what? This radius and the ulnar bone. All right. So that being said, you should know that about the humerus. Then the next is the specimen N, which is our mango seed. And we know that the mango has a scientific name, Mangifera indica. Alright, here is the classification of the mango seed for your own absorption. Then what about the mango seed? The mango seed is a large, hard, and flat seed found. So the mango seed is a large, hard, and a flat seed found inside of the mango fruit. All right, the shape, it is typically oval or oblong in shape and has a tough fibrous outer shell. All right, the seed is surrounded by a juicy flesh of the mango. All right, it is a dicotyledonous. All right, the embryo of the seed is covered with two-layer coats. Okay, the inner tegument and the outer testa. So that is that about the mango seed. All right, next to our next specimens, which is specimen P, the femur bone. All right, the femur bone is also known as the thigh bone. All right, it is the longest and the strongest bone of the body. All right, it extends from the hip. You can see where it joins the hip down to the what? Down to the knee. Okay, the head is round and it meets at the hip joint in a what? Joint which we call the acetabulum. All right. Remember that the humerus meets at the shoulder in the glenoid joint. Femur bone is referred to as the strongest bone because this is the bone that carry majority of what? Our weight. Alright, so without this bone, we cannot stand effectively and what? Upright. All right. Yet, and also this is important because this is where the bone marrow is usually made, in the femur bone. So that is that about the femur bone. Do well and read up the rest. Then quickly we have the lumbar vertebrae, which is the specimen Q. Okay, the lumbar vertebrae consists of 5 successive bones located on the lower back of the abdominal region. All right, here is it. Okay, it is usually labeled L1 to L5. Okay, you can say the lower abdominal region. All right, and also it is found in the third region of the vertebral column. Okay, yes, the third region after the cervical, the thoracic, and then you have the lumbar vertebrae. This lumbar vertebrae, it is the largest and the strongest bone in the spine. All right, because it is the bone that bears our body weight. All right, then structurally, if you're asked to draw the lumbar vertebrae, there are some key things you should be able to know. One is that it has a bean-shaped body. All right, like we said, it's for support and stability. Then it has what we call a thick arc or foramen. All right, this serves as a passage for the spinal cord. All right, it is where the spinal cord passes through, and also it is a point of connection to other vertebrae. All right, so you should also note that the lumbar vertebrae has an intervertebral disc. So here is the intervertebral disc. Okay, it prevents the bone from collapsing. All right, and also it has a fat spinous process. You can see the spinous process. All right, it serves as an attachment site for the muscle and the ligaments. So that is that about the lumbar vertebrae. And finally we have the last specimen, which was the specimen R, which is the orange seed. All right, the orange is known as the citrus sinensis, and here is the classification of the orange seed. The orange seed is known as the citrus sinensis. All right, and here is the breakdown of the classification of the orange seed. All right, so let us see one or two things about the orange seed. The orange seeds are small, oval shaped. All right, and found inside the orange fruit. So you can see the seed located in the orange fruit. This is what it looks like. Color wise, it is usually light brown or white and can vary in size depending on the species. All right, yet then they are not eaten, but they are used in various ways, such as planting. Okay, we put the seed in the soil and it germinates, and also we can extract oil from them. All right, the plantation is exile. All right, and it is a diacot. So this brings us to the end of the analysis of all the specimens that you are expected to see on the day of your biology practical. Thank you for watching and wish you the very best. Bye bye.